In our first lesson, we learned how to use the details in a passage to make inferences or educated guesses about things that are not directly stated by the author. In this lesson, we are going to examine some literary and informational texts and practice what we have learned. In this example, we are going to take a statement from a literary text and see if we can determine how Tammy, one of the characters in this statement, is probably feeling. But before we do that, let's kind of refresh on what are some details that we need to look for in literary text to help us make a good inference. So in stories, oftentimes we can look at a character's actions or dialogue and make an educated guess about what that character is like, as well as how he or she may feel. As you see in our example here, we are told that Maya's face turned beet red. Did anyone see that? She stuttered. Maya is embarrassed. How do we know this? Because it says that her face turned beet red. Why does somebody's face turn beet red? Well, usually that is a natural reaction to something that is embarrassing. So based on that information, based on this action that takes place, we can make the educated guess, we can make the inference that Maya is most likely embarrassed. Let's look at another example. Andrew was so scared he was shaking. Still, he held his head high and walked onto the stage. So how is Andrew feeling? Well, based on the information in the text, we can say that Andrew is brave. So we are told that he is scared and shaking. Okay, so we know that he's nervous about doing something. But what does he do? He still held his head high and walked onto the stage. So despite the fact that Andrew was scared, he still went out on stage. Therefore, we can infer that Andrew was brave. Now, let's go back to our original example. With a pinched face, Tammy took the light bulb from her brother's hands. "Here," she barked, "just let me do it." So based on the sentences that we are given, how is Tammy probably feeling? Is she irritated or proud? Well, let's look at the actions and the descriptions of the character to help us determine whether she was irritated or proud. So first, we are told that she has a pinched face. And if you're not sure what that means, it means her face was kind of scrunched in like, you know. Then it said that she took the light bulb from her brother's hands. Okay, so she took it. But then we have dialogue, and we are told that she barked. Okay, so it sounds like she's being kind of snappy. You know, "Here, just let me do it." So based on these clues, we can then infer that Tammy is probably feeling proud? No, Tammy is probably feeling irritated because the pinched face, the taking of the bulb, and the description of the dialogue as being "she barked" are clues that would tell us that she's most likely frustrated with her brother. Therefore, we can make the educated guess that Tammy is most likely feeling irritated. So now, let's work through another example. Austin pressed his lips together until they turned white. He kicked his toe hard into the dirt. So how is Austin probably feeling? Surprised or upset? Let's look at our clues once again. So Austin pressed his lips together until they turned white. Okay, so we get this sense that he's really just clamping his mouth down. He's clamping his lips together so hard that they're actually changing from their normal pink or flesh color. They're starting to turn more of a white color. Then, what other action does he utilize? It says he kicked his toe hard into the dirt. So he just kind of, kicks his foot. Does this sound like somebody is surprised? Or are these the actions of someone who is upset? Well, how many of you have had physical reactions to being upset about something? Do you get an angry look on your face? Do you scrunch your face in, press your lips together? Do you kick things? These are natural reactions to being upset. Therefore, based on the clues that we have here, we can make the inference that Austin is most likely upset. Bobby woke 2 hours earlier than everyone else on Saturday. He went for a 10-mile run and then made pancakes for the whole family. So based on these sentences, what is Bobby probably like? Are these the actions of someone who is energetic or the actions of someone who is nosy? Well, when we look at our clues, it says that Bobby woke 2 hours earlier than everyone else. Then it said he went for a 10-mile run and then made pancakes for the whole family. So why would Bobby complete these actions? Okay, so if the fact that he woke up 2 hours earlier than everyone else and then responds with a 10-mile run, sounds to me like this is somebody who has a lot of energy. How could these clues mean that Bobby is nosy, like he's trying to get into his family's business? There's nothing here that indicates that Bobby is being nosy. But these are actions of somebody who does have energy to burn. Therefore, we can infer that Bobby is energetic. Now let's take a look at an example from another type of literary text. In this case, we're going to be examining a text that is historical fiction. If you recall from the previous unit, we learned that historical fiction is a fictional story that takes place in the actual historical past. So it could take place around a particular event in history, or it could involve characters in the story who are individuals that actually lived during a particular time period. Now, in this particular example, we are asked to look at paragraphs 3 through 5. Now, in Unit 1, I pointed out that a good tape testing strategy is, due to the fact that the tape test is timed, if you were told specifically in the question to look at a particular paragraph, to focus on just that paragraph for the question. So in this example, we're not going to read through the entire passage. We are going to specifically look at paragraphs 3 through 5 to help us answer this question. So, before we begin reading, the question states, based on paragraphs 3 through 5, how does Daniel feel about meeting the person in his uncle's office? So let's take a look at paragraphs 3 through 5 and see what clues we find to help us answer this particular question. Mama's brother, Uncle John, was the only African-American lawyer for miles around. For a couple of years now, since 1947, he had been representing a waitress who argued she was unfairly treated because of her race. Mama was worried about that case. Daniel knew. But who is this someone I'm supposed to talk to? Daniel wondered, his stomach churning. Daniel, come in, Uncle John boomed as they arrived. Yes, sir, Daniel squeaked, wiping his damp hands on his pants, entering his uncle's office. He saw a well-dressed man standing by the desk. Now, we are asked, once again, how does Daniel feel about meeting the person in his uncle's office? Let's take a look at the clues from the passage. So, we are told that Mama was worried about that case. Daniel knew. Okay, so he already knew his mother was worried. But who is this someone I'm supposed to talk to? Daniel wondered, his stomach churning. Okay, so he is asking about who he's supposed to talk to. And it says that his stomach was churning. Now, why would Daniel's stomach be churning as he's thinking about this person who is coming to his uncle's office? Here are our options. He is curious and excited to see who the person is. He is disappointed that his mother is sending him to talk to someone else. He is angry with his mother for taking him to his uncle's office. Or he is anxious and nervous about meeting this person. Our only real clue is the fact that Daniel's stomach was churning. So why is his stomach churning? Is it because he's curious and excited? Maybe. Does it sound like he's disappointed that his mother sent him to talk to someone else? Well, he's wondering why, but there's nothing in the text that gives us any indication that he is disappointed in his mother. So this can be ruled out. The next one, he is angry with his mother for taking him to his uncle's office. Again, what in the text gives us the idea that he is angry? None of his actions seem to indicate anger. So we can roll this option out as well. He is anxious and nervous about meeting this person. So we need to ask ourselves, why is his stomach churning? Is it because he's curious and excited? Or is it because he is anxious and nervous? So that's our big question. So think about times that you have been curious and excited, and times that you have been anxious about something or nervous about something. When does your stomach churn? What is your reaction to that feeling? Your stomach is going to churn. It's going to get upset and make you feel like that you're going to throw up if you were anxious about something. Now, yes, we do have physical reactions that happen naturally to being excited, but typically that's not an upset stomach. If you're nervous, oftentimes that will present with an upset stomach. Therefore, he's feeling anxious and nervous about meeting this person. Now that we've had an opportunity to practice with a couple of literary texts, let's see if we can apply what we learned in Lesson 1 and identify details that will help us make inferences in informational texts. So we're going to look at a couple of examples from different styles of informational text to give us that opportunity to practice. Let's take a look at this passage about edible book festivals. Some people love to read books. They can't get enough of the printed word, and some people have a big appetite for making and eating food. Well, if you are both a voracious reader and eater, you may want to take part in an edible book festival. It is a place where you can have your book and eat it too. In an edible book festival, people create projects and present them to judges. There are 2 rules when entering a project. The project must be made out of food, and it must be based on a book. For example, someone might make the chocolate factory from Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The factory could be made with foods like chocolate bars and other candy. Another person could make a cake that is decorated like the cover of Judy Barrett's Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Sometimes judges award prizes for the best projects in certain categories, like Best Pun. A pun is a funny play on words. Puns often use words that sound similar but have different meanings, like tail, T-A-L-E, and tail, T-A-I-L. A possible winner for Best Pun might show Peter Rabbit with a tail made of marshmallow fluff. The character is from Beatrix Potter, The Tale of Peter Rabbit. To make a pun, the project could be called The Tale, T-A-I-L, of Peter Rabbit. That title might be punny enough to make the judges laugh. Given the fun and often silly nature of edible book festivals, it is not surprising that many of them are held on April 1st, April Fool's Day. April 1st is also the birthday of Jean-Anthelme Brillat-Savarin, a famous French food writer from the 1800s. On this day, people gather in colleges, libraries, and bookstores to show their creativity, humor, and love for books. So based on the text, which interests or hobbies are represented in an edible book festival? Select all that apply. Okay, so in this passage, we are asked to identify interests or hobbies that are represented in a book festival. So let's take a look at the first one. Reading books. Well, if we look at our first paragraph, the very first sentence, some people love to read books. And then they go on to discuss this love of reading books. So, one hobby or interest that is represented is reading books. Next is borrowing books. When we look through the passage, there's not really a mention of borrowing books other than it says in the very last sentence, on this day people gather in colleges, libraries, and bookstores to show their creativity, humor, and love for books. Now, even though it mentions that these events take place at a library, which is where we typically go to borrow a book, the passage itself doesn't really talk about the act of borrowing books. So in this case, borrowing books is not really discussed in the passage. Making creative food is our next option. Again, we do not have to go very far. It's in the first paragraph. It says, well, if you are both a voracious reader and eater, you may want to take part in an edible book festival. It is a place where you can have your book and eat it too. And then the second passage goes on to explain how an edible book festival works. It says that the 2 rules when entering a project: the project must be made out of food and it must be based on a book. So, making creative food is what these edible book festivals are all about. It gives people an opportunity to show culinary creativity while also expressing their love for a particular book. So making creative food is represented in this passage. Traveling to new places. Again, the last sentence says people gather in colleges, libraries, and bookstores. So yes, they would have to travel to these, but they're not really traveling to new places. So that one is not represented in the passage. So the 2 interests that are represented in an edible book festival are reading books and making creative food. In our final example, we are going to look at an informational passage about a famous woman named Hedy Lamarr. So let's take a look at the passage and then answer the question below. Back in the 1940s, Hedy Lamarr was a talented actor, dancer, and pianist. She was well known for her movie performances, but most people didn't know that she was also an inventor. Lamarr loved science and was always looking for ways to make things better. Her brain was overflowing with ideas, so she set up a small workshop in her trailer on a film set. In between filming movie scenes, Lamarr would go back to her trailer to work on her latest invention. Lamarr invented lots of interesting things. She created a glow-in-the-dark dog collar to help people find lost pets at night. She made a tablet that turned plain water into a fizzy drink. She even created a new kind of stoplight that would alert drivers that the light was about to change. Lamarr never tried to sell her inventions. She wasn't trying to make money. She just had fun inventing things. Although most of her inventions did not catch on or become famous, other inventors would later use her ideas to create technology that would change the world. Lamarr enjoyed improving things. When a friend who was a pilot and airplane builder complained that his airplane wasn't speedy enough, she wanted to help. Lamarr thought the wings looked too square. She read books about birds and fish. She studied the wings of the swiftest bird and the fins of the quickest fish. Then she combined the elements of both in a sketch. Her sketch was used by scientists to create a new wing design that made airplanes fly more quickly. In the 1940s, Lamarr wanted to help the United States win World War II. She and her partner invented a secret communication system called frequency hopping. This technology was a new way of using radio waves. It would help the Navy's underwater weapons reach their targets. But the Navy decided the invention was too complicated to use. Although Lamarr didn't help win the war, her notable invention did form the beginning of technologies used today. Years later, other inventors used her remarkable work on frequency hopping to create wireless communication systems. These include major modern technologies like Wi-Fi, which uses radio waves to provide wireless internet connections. Even though Lamarr didn't invent Wi-Fi, she is sometimes called the mother of Wi-Fi, since her early work helped pave the way for it. Lamarr was certainly more than just your average entertainer. Now, we are asked to determine who this text is about. Well, we know the text is about Hedy Lamarr, but we have 4 options that we need to decide between to determine which one best represents how the author is presenting Hedy Lamarr. So first, we are told Hedy Lamarr, an actor who became a hero during World War II? Well, was Hedy Lamarr an actor? Yes, we're told that specifically in the passage. Hedy Lamarr was a talented actor. But did she become a hero during World War II? Well, if we go down to paragraph 4, we find out that she wanted to help the United States win World War II, and she came up with a new invention called frequency hopping that was a new way to use radio waves. But in paragraph 5, it says, although Lamarr didn't help win the war, her notable invention did form the beginning of technologies used today. So, did Hedy Lamarr become a hero of World War II? No, so our first option is ruled out. The second one, Hedy Lamarr, a well-known dancer who invented Wi-Fi later in life. Is this statement true? Was Hedy Lamarr a dancer? Yes, we're told that in the very first sentence of paragraph 1. But did she invent Wi-Fi? We are told that she did not in paragraph 5. She's called the mother of Wi-Fi because her early work helped pave the way for it. We're also told that she actually did not invent it. It's just she had the ideas that led to its invention. So this statement is actually false, so there's no way that we can say that that is the correct answer. Hedy Lamarr, a performer who was also a great inventor. Okay, so was she a performer? Yes, in paragraph 1. Lamarr was a talented actor, dancer, and pianist. Okay, these are all performance arts. So yes, Hedy Lamarr was a performer. The rest of the paragraph talks about her love of inventing things and different things that she invented, whether the idea caught on or it didn't. So option 3 seems to be our answer. Yes, Hedy Lamarr was a performer who was also a great inventor. But let's make sure that option 4 is not a correct answer. Hedy Lamarr, a famous performer who later became an airline pilot. Well, we've already established that she was a famous performer, but does the passage say that she became an airline pilot? Well, if you look at paragraph 3, it talks about a friend who was a pilot, but it never mentions Lamarr becoming a pilot herself. This paragraph just talks about her improving the design of an airplane's wings by studying birds and fish to come up with an idea to help an airplane fly more quickly. So Lamarr, at least according to this passage, never became a pilot herself. With us ruling out option 4, we now know that option 3 is the correct answer.